My name is Janine Elliott. I am Associate Director at Venture Catalyst in the Office of Research. And I thank you all for being here today. Feel free to come closer if you would like. We're hoping that people will be coming from some of the other sessions as well and filling in the edges and the back of the room. So I am thrilled today to be a part of this conversation with our esteemed panel. And the reason I'm so excited is that my background is in commercialization of STEM technologies, and it is not an easy thing to do. So today we have a couple of different perspectives in the mix, and just to lay this out for you, we've got an entrepreneur who co-founded a company. We've got a researcher who's been prolific with licensing. We've got my colleague Mike, who works in Venture Catalyst, spinning technologies and innovations out of the university as ventures. We've got Eugene, who's working in tech transfer and innovation access, making sure that that intellectual property is safeguarded and transferred appropriately. And then Jamie Shattuck is also working in corporate engagement and looking at how all of these pieces start to fit together in terms of the partnerships that may be necessary as well. So I am thrilled to introduce everybody here, but it's even better when they introduce themselves. So what I'd love for each of you to do is just to share in a couple of sentences who you are, a little bit about your background, and sort of what brings you to this panel today. And maybe we can start at the end and work our way this way.
Thanks, Janine. Appreciate the opportunity to share the stage with this group today. I'm Jamie Shattuck. I support our corporate engagement efforts here at UC Davis, very much trying to build industry partnerships broadly across the campus. I am part of foundation and corporate engagement. So Tracy Galba on our team leads the foundation half of our group, and we formally report into development and alumni relations. That being said, partnerships are key to what we do. So I think it's great that we've got some of our key partners here on the stage with us today. And I look forward to sharing a little bit about the services that our team offers to help really build mutually beneficial partnerships between UC Davis and companies.
Thank you, Jamie. Tough act to follow. Hi, my name is Eugene Sisman. I am a Senior Intellectual Property Officer at UC Davis Innovation Access. My office is responsible for stewarding the intellectual property generated here at UC Davis. I primarily work with the Department of, with the College of Agriculture. So I've worked with Jorge extensively, and I have the pleasure of managing much of the work that comes out of his lab. I am a biologist by first profession, an attorney by second profession, and I've been working at the university for about 8 years now. My office's chief role and the services we provide are as an interface, preferably, hopefully, the first point of contact when something fantastic emerges, and we help facilitate the translation of new ideas into products, into maybe companies, and then protect intellectual property and deal with it with the outside world as appropriate.
Great. Kemba here. Mike Lemke, I'm Associate Director with Venture Catalyst, a unit here on campus that helps facilitate the translation of research by providing a suite of comprehensive services for startups to get started, everything from proof of concept grant funding to various resources that folks need to form and start and grow a company, working with our incubators here locally, and then also working with the investment community to hopefully put some funding behind these innovations. So, yeah.
Hi, I'm Holly Gantz, and I am the Chief Science Officer for Animal Biome. Is this working? Okay, better. So I am an alum of UC Davis, and I came back after my postdoc to study the microbiome of companion animals, and started a citizen science project that led me to create the business Animal Biome. And I was able to benefit from a number of the programs run by people here today.
Hello, I'm Jorge Dubkowski. I'm from the plant sciences department. I'm the wheat breeder and lead the small grains breeding program. So we release the varieties that all of you eat as bread, bagels, pizza, and other nice stuff. And we also have a research lab on wheat genetics. So with anything related to wheat, we are interested. And we are passionate about trying to make wheat more productive, more nutritious, better quality, and enjoyable for as many people as possible. Thank you.
Wonderful. So I'd actually love to start with Holly and Jorge and to just understand a little bit more. You both are researchers, you're scientists by training. And, you know, sometimes a lot of researchers can be focused so much on the research and so much on the science or so much on publishing, dare I say, that there's sort of the forgetting about how that's going to get out into the world. And so I'm curious to know what motivated you to actually pursue these paths to commercialization, be they with a startup or be they through the licensing process. I don't know if either of you wants to start first.
Well, in the breeding program, the objective is very practical. You release a variety and then you want it to be used. Since the university doesn't have a marketing effort, so if you want your varieties to be used, you need to engage with the users. So in our cases, we engage usually with the seed companies. We provide them the varieties in advance. We do testing agreements with Eugene. They test the material before to be sure that they like it. So when the varieties are out there in the release, they already know what those varieties can do for them, and then they usually get the varieties. There are two different models there. You can do public releases of a variety. That means that everybody can buy that variety. We still protect the varieties using the Plant Variety Protection Act, the PVP. It's a special type of patent. It's not a patent, but a protection for the intellectual property. And then we license them as public varieties. The other model is that sometimes the university is starting to embrace more recently is to do exclusive releases where a company will purchase the variety in exclusivity. So only that company can purchase the variety, which has the advantage that then they are engaged in marketing the variety. That is something that sometimes is missing when we do a public release.
Great, thanks. I'm going to come back to you in just a minute, a little bit more about that. But Holly, tell us a little bit about your journey and sort of getting the entrepreneurial bug bite.
Yeah, I didn't expect that I would start a company. But I did write a lot of grants, and I feel like there's some similarities with trying to raise funding for an idea that you have. So in a way, I think it prepared me. But my story is that it's really challenging to get funding for companion animal research. And so I wrote a number of beautiful grants that didn't get properly reviewed because it's very competitive, but also at that time, and even people didn't think the microbiome affected animal health, which is shocking. And so I was funded in Jonathan Eisen's lab through the Sloan Foundation to do science communication. So I started a Kickstarter for a project called Kitty Biome to look at the cat microbiome. And we thought it's a way to get some basic data on the cat microbiome and also to maybe engage the public in scientific research. And because they're not going to fund research if they don't know about it, and cats ruled the internet. So we launched that and set a sort of modest funding goal because Kickstarter's all or nothing. And we raised it overnight. And it wasn't just my mom and our friends who backed it. There were a lot of people who had a cat with a chronic digestive condition, and they had been on what I now know of as a kind of medical merry-go-round with antibiotics, prescription diet, steroids, and they were living with chronic diarrhea. And once I started talking to people about their pet cats, I couldn't stop thinking about them. And I wanted to do something to help. And when I looked at their microbiomes, they were very depleted and out of balance. And so initially I thought I got some help about what's the regulations around doing veterinary diagnostics. Thought it would be focused on diagnostics, but also people told me that they don't really care about the names of bacteria in their cat's poop. They just want them to not have diarrhea. So pretty quickly we started with oral fecal transplant as a way to reintroduce beneficial bacteria that have been harmed by antibiotic use. And the real vision was to create microbial cocktails to replace FMT, fecal microbiota transplantation. And it took years to raise the capital, but we now have a microbial discovery lab built and running.
Wow, there we go. So these are some pretty massive journeys, and a lot of the time they sort of start with a single step, as they say. So at this point, I'd love to sort of tap Mike and tap Eugene a little bit in terms of what types of support were you able to provide at these very early stages for these innovators, and what of those programs are still available to innovators these days?
Yeah, no, so I think even just hearing the very different stories on stage here, I think everybody has a really kind of unique path to commercialization, and so that's really how we try to set up venture catalysts and how we try to help companies in a lot of different ways. And so that goes, a lot of times it's everything from helping get mentors in industry. So we have a MentorNet program where we could connect people that might be able to talk to diagnostics or things like that. Sometimes there's really amazing facilities here on campus that a startup needs access to. So sometimes I think we worked on trying to figure out how do we leverage the core facilities on campus to help specific know-how and specific instrumentation. Also, when companies just need to be incorporated, we have a LegalNet program with trusted lawyers that we trust where they can get set up, formed properly in the beginning, make sure that they're set up on solid ground as they get going. And just, I think there's so many different kind of projects that we do. I know with Jorge, we did a creative project with him where he's actually one of our STARE grant proof of concept grant awardees, where he was looking at a new breed of triticale, and it did all the heavy lifting of developing it in his lab, but we needed to make more to send out to customers. And so we, with our proof of concept grant, funded a growth of the wheat so they could go out and try it and hopefully generate more interest. So I think it's always a very custom engagement, but we have a lot of different resources kind of help in those early stages to get set up and grow in the early stages.
Yeah, echoing what Mike said, and thank you for that. It is very, very custom with respect to what kind of steps the university is able to take. When a piece of intellectual property comes into our office, the first question is, what is it? What do we have, and how does it relate to the end product? And also whether or not the university is empowered to take action with respect to it. Is it actually a piece of the university's intellectual property, or does it belong to the creators or some other entity, and to figure out what the third-party entitlement may be. But once we have what we identify, we try to figure out whether or not we need to work with a small business or a large business, whether or not this is the kind of technology where nobody will take it forward if we don't help spin a company out, whether or not it's something that should be exclusive or non-exclusive, whether or not it's something that can even be protected, or whether or not it should be protected. There are technologies that we come across where we don't think that protection is appropriate or in the greater good, and others where we think that exclusive protection and being able to control the access to the technology is the only way to make sure that something is properly translated. Because if it gets out there, it will become it will lose its spark. It will lose its what makes it unique. And so we will sometimes engage with patent counsel to try to protect technologies and license them to companies. We will sometimes take alternative paths, whether that be providing access to information or access to materials. But in any case, it's a very bespoke process, and it is endlessly fascinating.
No, I know that one of the things that has really set Jorge apart from many researchers is the fact that with his STARE grant, he was looking at some very specific proof of concept data with end users. And at the same time, he's also been very prolific in that ability for these innovations to be licensed. because just because something is patented doesn't necessarily mean somebody's waiting on the other side to be excited to license it from you, right? So Jorge, I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about how you came to the realization that you needed to engage people deeper in the value chain or in the supply chain, because it strikes me as unique that you were working with bread bakers, for example, all the way at the end user level to make sure that this is something that they would adopt so that the seed companies would get excited so that you knew that your work would go moving forward. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
We fortunately have in California a very proactive group of growers. They have a commission, it's the California Wheat Commission, and they fund our breeding program is funded in part by them, and they are in contact with millers, with bakers. For us, there's a complete chain of value that goes from the variety, then the grower, then the miller, then the baker. So and each of them has different requirements. So to keep the industry coordinated, the California Wheat Commission organizes every year meetings with all the millers and bakers and growers and seed companies together. So we all know each other. I mean, kind of know the needs of the industry. So when we develop a product, we know who to talk with. So for example, for the triticales, is a variety that's used for forage that we are trying to convert into a grain for human consumption. We know that it's not something that will go into the general market immediately. So we take a step and go to the artisan bakers, and we know that the artisan bakers buy their flour for artisan millers. And so we contact the artisan millers and we send them samples of our varieties so they can try it in their products and they can taste it. And so you engage the users of that material. Similarly, when we license the technology, we license the technology for wheat transformation to produce transgenics in wheat. So we know the companies that do that. So even though Eugene took the heavy lift on the agreements and things, we contact those companies, send an email, let them know that the technology was available. Well, if you have been honest during your career and you have some credibility and you have not been trying to sell things that are not real, when you tell those people that you have something that's useful, they know that it may be useful, and so they try to use it.
Thank you. And so just in that vein of getting to know industry, getting to know what they want. I know that in your case, Holly, your company has had a lot of different partnerships, both with corporations and others. I actually was at an agritech summit recently and met some of the venture capitalists that work with Cargill, and they were like, "Oh, we love animal biome." And so I'm just curious to know, how did you form those relationships with these, big corporates, being a relatively small startup when you did so? What type of credibility did you need to win in order to speak to them, or how did you actually have those interactions such that you were able to make those deals?
Right. This is a great question. Being a scientist, I didn't have like a network of investment banker friends to draw on, and so I had to figure that out. So we did the Indy Bio Life Science Accelerator program, and they encouraged us to go to the JP Morgan Health Care event in San Francisco. I never really met anyone there who liked when I went, but it was a good way. I think actually Venture Catalyst likes to have an event there. I don't know if they still do, because but in 2020, Cargill came for that event, and they came to meet us. But I had initially met them at, there are these private sort of connect events that these businesses run for industry, and I started going to them. As a startup, I would always negotiate that I didn't have to pay anything, and I'd be on some pitch, competition, and just networked a lot. And I think I became aware of them, and the fact that Cargill had done so much in microbiome work around livestock, and they sponsor some of these events, and so we sort of became familiar with each other, I think in part through those events.
Okay, so I'm hearing it's about relationship building. You got to build out that network. It's not going to quite happen overnight. It wasn't just like some person at IndieBio was like, "Hey, you should talk to Holly," and then it just happened. It's a bit more of a slow burn.
Yeah, that was the, the fantasy. I think when I started, right, they're going to just pull out their Rolodex and make the right introduction. And I think for some products or companies that might work better. I think if you have an innovation in food, I think they have a fantastic network. But combining companion animals and genomics, that just wasn't a good. Yeah, there's not a lot of investors who understand that.
Yeah, microbiome, I feel like, has really taken off just in the past year or two. So I can only imagine getting ahead of that curve and it being a really difficult position to be in. And so I'm curious to know also, just sort of jumping to Jamie, and in this spirit of thinking about different partners and different corporates that are out there, and doing that needs assessment. We're hearing from Jorge, he really listened to the industry and then continued that iterative process. We're hearing from Holly, she kind of had to go out there and just figure out who was really the player in those spaces and start building those relationships. How does foundation and corporate relations engage with corporates, and sort of where do you find those matchmaking opportunities between researchers and corporates?
Yeah, thanks, Janine. I think that's a really complicated question, but when we break it down, it really does come back to the relationships. So when we think about our services, because we are a service unit to the campus, I do that in regard to how can I help establish those relationships such that we're ready to move forward at the appropriate time when there's mutual interest by both the company and the university or the faculty member. And I think we really work in two ways. One is to get to know our faculty members. We want to talk to you. We want to understand your research, what you're doing, why you think an industry partnership would be valuable, how it might look for you, what your outcomes are, and have those conversations early. And then the other flip side is to really focus on developing relationships with companies that want to have multiple touch points here at UC Davis. Maybe they're interested in hiring your graduate students. Maybe it's a collaborative research project. Maybe it's just access to campus core facilities. Our team tends to get involved in relationships a little bit earlier than Eugene and Mike, because we want to get we want the investment to come here to UC Davis, and we want there to be a project that's mutually beneficial to both you and the company. Projects and programs, two keywords that I talk with to a lot of our faculty members about trying to identify what of your research is really of interest. How could a collaboration be beneficial for you? What is the outcome that you're looking for? And so each member of our team helps to coordinate with particular companies. I've actually got two of my colleagues in the audience today, Charlie Lemke and Jody Doms. And we've got a table outside afterwards, so we'd be happy to talk to anyone in more depth. But the earlier we start to have conversations and understand where your interest is, just kind of keeps it on our radar, so that as we have conversations with the key points of contacts at companies, we can make sure to bring your research forward in a way that hopefully adds benefit in terms of where you want to go.
Great. So in the spirit of taking people where they want to go, how they're going to move forward, one of the questions that often will come up for innovators is, what is a piece of advice or a resource that you would suggest to an innovator who might be, navigating this question of, I'm a researcher, I may or may not have something that's for the market. What steps might I take next, or what resource should I be considering? And then maybe we'll get to that advice question next. So first, a resource or a suggestion. I don't know, any of you. I'm actually kind of curious to hear from all of you on this one, because you have such different vantage points.
First and ask him where to go. I just know one person. I don't remember a lot of people. So he would say, you need to go to MTAs, you need to go to that one, you need to go to the other one. And in our case, I think I would say something nice about that office is It's a good thing that they have a training in biology besides the training in laws, because that makes the communication a lot easier for us. So for example, when we discovered a transformation technology, I think it took us 10 minutes to convince him and Tucker that we had something of value, because they know that that was a limitation in the area. So I start with the innovation access just because that's the people I know.
Eugene, you're on the spot.
Thank you. Thank you for that so very much. And no, it didn't take long to convince me of the value of that latest technology. Innovation Access, I'm blessed to work for, is a place full of science nerds that love to be the second people in the world to learn about your new technology. So come to us early, come to us often, just for a chat. You don't have to fill out a record of invention, just contact whoever you think your IP officer is, and find out, bounce your ideas off of us. We're hilariously overworked and understaffed at this point, but still the fact remains that the earlier you get in contact with us and the more chance we have to provide input and ask questions, the kinds of questions that are going to lead to the kinds of answers that lead you to come up with more patentable, more marketable things, the better. And it's probably the most fun part of my job, is being able to be the second person in the world to learn about the ideas and to maybe have a hand in shaping how they enter the market.
Janine, you asked for a resource. I weekly review the funding opportunities email that comes out from the Office of Research, listing all of our upcoming corporate and foundation RFPs, along with government grants, limited submissions, just using that as an upcoming proposal deadline and understanding where we likely already have a relationship and if there's somebody in our team who might be able to provide guidance based on the program manager and what they're more specifically looking for. So I think that's a really good resource that the Office of Research provides.
I'm going to go to you, Holly. What's a resource that you think any budding innovator should be thinking about?
I don't know if you guys still do the Entrepreneurship Academy, but that's where I got started. I received the Keller Pathway Fellowship through the Graduate School of Management, and they included going to the Entrepreneurship Academy, and that's where I learned about Venture Capital Catalyst, and they helped me incorporate animal biome and got me started. Yeah.
Yeah, but you stole mine. No, but I think I think you guys have listed some really good ones. So again, talking to Innovation Access is always good, especially from a technology standpoint, to make sure that you could protect the technology. A lot of times it's the value that you're building off of at an early stage coming out of the university. I think the Institute for Innovation Entrepreneurship that teaches entrepreneurship academies are amazing 4-day academies that really teach you a lot of the things you need to think about in the first 3 to 9 months of building an innovation, and how do you communicate it and how do you build your network, and they do amazing work there. I think also, at Venture Catalyst, we have other additional resources to help people think through what the size of their market is. So we do market research reports. We work with an I-Corps program where people do customer discovery in depth and try to figure out the positioning of their products. And have a lot of other kind of resources. But I think, again, we're reaching out, engaging, and I think a lot of times the folks on this panel could help guide you in the right place to where would be the next logical step in the journey, because each one is very custom.
Okay, so speaking of customization, this is actually the part where I'm going to ask for some audience participation, because each of you probably came to this talk because there was a question that you had or a curiosity that you had about bridging the gap from tech to commercialization. So at this point, I'm going to make my microphone available to anybody who has a question that they'd like to throw to somebody on this panel. So, because now we've had a chance to get to know some people, let's jump in there.
I think I'm loud enough. I can just ask. What's the most common mistake that people make when coming to your office first?
what is the most common mistake that people make when people come to your office with an invention or some IP that they wish to seek, for which they wish to seek commercialization?
Not coming to us first.
Disclosing all the intellectual property?
Disclosing, yeah, before coming to us is the single most common and most damaging mistake, because patent rights are immediately impacted the moment anybody outside of the university or outside of a confidentiality bubble learns about it. Oh, that's a great question. Thank you. They can look like anything. They can be a lab meeting where the minutes were posted or the slides were posted online. They can be a poster. They can be an abstract. They can be the abstract posted in a published awarded federal grant. They can look like any number of things that you wouldn't normally associate with the word publication, but in patent law is a publication.
And in the varieties, we can not give a variety to somebody to test. We cannot give seeds without a material transfer agreement, because then we cannot PPP. So I know we learned that. So we first make the PPP, and if you want people to test it, you do a material testing agreement, and then you are protected for the use of that material.
Okay, so actually, I'm curious to hear from each of you fatal mistakes that you've either done or noticed, just building on that question, and then I'm going to take that question in the back.
I guess I could comment. I think intellectual property is the most tough one because it's the hardest one to fix if somebody has kind of given away a lot of the most valuable things. That being said, a lot of times there are paths. There's a lot of different ways we can still build things up. I think that is the biggest mistake because sometimes it takes years to fix that path. And then I think also just maybe not coming and talking to us sooner, because I think again we can help accelerate people's journey and help them navigate different things. And sometimes people are nervous about reaching out because that they have conflicts of interest. Well, we can help people navigate conflicts of interest and try to figure that out and figure out a way to be innovative while still being able to do the rest of the jobs that you do. So
I think the Kitty Biome project that started things for me was a citizen science project. So we were very all about open science. So we started releasing microbiome reports. So there was no way we were going to be able to get a patent on that. I don't know that we could have anyway. But figuring out your IP strategy is challenging and but important, and it's good to get expert advice. You really need to talk to the lawyers.
I just want to add a little bit to my answer. Not coming to us first is just a little bit better than coming to us without sufficient lead time. It takes time to put together a strategy. It takes time to put together an application. The sooner, the better. In a perfect world, we would hear about things when the materials and methods section gets written.
I'm not sure I have a fatal mistake. There's a lot that goes into relationship building, and we're here to help support that. Ahmad's sitting in the audience, and one thing that I think maybe comes to mind is not to negotiate on behalf of the university. We are here to help support and build relationships. We want you to come up with a great scope of work for a project with a company, and then we want to let his team do the negotiation. So I will say our office does not sign any agreements. I'm very thrilled with that. I don't want that to change. But we know all the people on campus who do. And so we want to make sure that you get connected to the right team and the right office early. And if that's Ahmad and sponsored programs, if it's Eugene and Tech Transfer, Venture Catalyst with Mike or Janine, we want to help make those connections for you and make it as easy as possible for there to be a successful project.
So do you have any recommendations for if there's a technology that's maybe not large enough to warrant a company being built around it, but still might be useful for people in the industry and maybe isn't patentable, but getting that out and having that help the industry?
We did that for our transformation technologies. We didn't want to make a patent for that. And we just make an invention on that. And I want to mention to the audience, because I'm not sure that everybody knows, but as an inventor, you get 35% of the royalties of any discovery that you make. So you still get a big portion of the commercialization. And for me, that I don't like to take risks and create a company, I'm not that courageous. It's a good balance.
So, so for not every technology can have a company spun up around it. Some technologies can only have a company spun up around it. As if you heard earlier, I sprinkled the words appropriate in a lot of my phrases and descriptions of how we protect technology. Sometimes it's not worth patenting. Patents are expensive, and sometimes the value of the technology is best just released into the world, into the wild. And these are all collective business decisions that get to be made on behalf of the university. And we welcome the input of the researchers. 99 times out of 100, we all see eye to eye on it after we work things out. But it is not always the right way to go.
And maybe to add to that a little bit, I think, when, I work with Innovation Access quite a bit as a venture catalyst, and I think we're always thinking, our mission as a university is to really get things out there and make an impact. And so I think when we're thinking and talking in our meetings, a lot of times it is trying to figure that out. So even though, Venture Catalyst manages the proof of concept grant program on campus, we're not only thinking about startups, we're thinking about how can this become a better innovation. And then sometimes it's licensed out, sometimes it is something that becomes a venture, and sometimes people say, I just want to release this to the world because that will get it out the best way. And so I think we're constantly trying to think that through. Sometimes though, the ability to have to get investment and to get it out into the world might be to create a company or to license it to somebody as well, instead of just releasing it. I have had a few horror stories of people that just release it to the world, but then it lost all of its value and couldn't get the funding to make it to people. And that's also a tragedy in itself as well sometimes.
Hi, I was just wondering, because I am actually a graduate from UC Davis. I did both my master's and my PhD here. And since then, I can tell that there is definitely a lot more emphasis on entrepreneurship and managing intellectual property. So I'm curious from a curriculum development and also on how once the projects are started from industry-sponsored agreements, how are students taught about managing intellectual property?
I don't know if there's any consistency across campus. The College of Engineering has an mandatory undergraduate course and a graduate course, both of which I'm a guest speaker on, and regularly tell the students about intellectual property topics. It would be nice if every science department or non-science department had something like that, but I'm probably overpromising of our ability to deliver all those lectures. But I find that to be very helpful. We also have internships in our office that are fantastic training opportunities for the students that participate in them. And I think Jorge sent a student or two through our office and can speak more to the value of that. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that. So Ahmed is in the room and is much better positioned to speak to that. But the participants in a sponsored research program, I believe, are informed of the rights and obligations under that research. That's not my office that handles those agreements or handles the consents to those.
And Irene, I'll just go ahead and add, in terms of student engagement, I think it's something that we've really seen as a bottom-up approach. Our students are really wanting to get involved early and often. Our internship and career center has new and different programs. Leaders for the professors for the future has advanced into also being leaders for the future. I myself sat in a class for second year life science students, really teaching them about opportunities to utilize their science degree in careers and really trying to expose them early and often. Internships are becoming, I don't want to say mandatory, but it feels like the bulk of our students are really engaging. And then when you look at the graduate student curriculum, I think it's ingrained in a lot of the things that we're doing, because we know so many of our students are going out into careers in industry, and we want to help find ways to support that through what they learn here at UC Davis.
Yeah, and I'll add that when I see an inventor list, when I see a new invention come through our office, if it seems like the kind of invention that would be best supported by a startup, one of my first questions is to find out who from the inventor list is either a PhD student that's about to get their PhD, or a postdoc that's about to end the postdoc, or somebody else that is positioned. Maybe it's a faculty member that's just ready to retire and start a second career. I try to find the people that are going to be the champions of the technology from among the inventor list, because often those are the best cheerleaders the technology will ever have. And they're key. And I also view this as integral to part of the public service that we provide, because there are not enough academic jobs for all of the PhDs that are graduating, and having entrepreneurial experience is a tremendous boon for the people coming out of here.
So another question for Eugene. The academics, former academics that I've worked with, I think they don't always know when an idea is patentable. And I'm curious how you might sort of describe it at a level that can help folks sort of know when they should come to you.
That's, there are other people here, but that's a really tough question to answer in a vacuum. There's a rule of thumb in patent law where you need to have a technology enabled in order to get a successful patent application granted. It has to be able to, the application has to be able to teach a person having ordinary skill in the art on how to practice an invention. Now, it just so happens that that's pretty darn close to peer review standard if you break that language down. And so that comes out to when the materials and methods section. And that's why that's my rule of thumb. But different projects ideate in very different ways. Sometimes you'll get conception with pretty clear reduction to practice, at least on a conceptual level, out of a stray comment in a meeting where two people that don't usually work together have a conversation, and there it is. So, very tough question to answer.
Hi, I'm leading the UC Davis team for the semifinals of an International Urban Greenhouse Challenge. And I'd love to talk to you guys more about the resources that are available for us to get that off the ground in an actual practice outside of the challenge. I'll be speaking tomorrow, actually, if any of you will be there and would like to hear more. But for now, we have a final report going out next Sunday. And I'd just like to ask Eugene, what are some quick things that some quick intellectual property protection measures we can put in there? I know, like you said, you need time and there's not enough time to do like a full detailed analysis, but do you have any pointers of like anything that we can put in to protect ourselves from having anything being used?
Please, let's talk after.
Thank you. I'm Rob Royer with Histolix. Mike, you and I have worked on some projects together, and thank you. The company's actually doing pretty well. With that, Eugene, we need to talk before the night is over, because Jamie, we've got some corporate involvement that's interested in what we're doing, and we enable their technology. And we want to make sure that we're covering ourselves from a corporate standpoint, but also from our intellectual property side. So I thank all of you. You've done well.
Histolics technology that was developed from a proof of concept grant too, with Richard Levinson, amazing researcher on campus.
Love it. We're getting the audience testimonials going. This is fabulous. Well, cool. We're starting to come down to our top of the half hour. So I guess I'm just curious to know if there are any last thoughts, last questions. Okay, so with that, I'm going to actually pass this down the line, and just one more final thought, one pearl of wisdom to budding innovators in the audience. We've covered IP, we've covered relationship building. What's maybe one more thing that you're like, if you get nothing else from today's talk, this is my pearl of wisdom to pass along to you. And we can just popcorn this. We don't have to go down the line necessarily.
I guess I could jump in. I think there's probably more resources around commercialization and innovation and entrepreneurship on campus now than there's ever been. So I think my advice would be to get out of the building. You know, we're out of the building here with you know, getting out of these pandemic times and getting out and meeting each other, but go engage with some of these folks that are the Student Startup Center, the Institute for Innovation Entrepreneurship. Come visit us at Venture Catalyst, drop us an email. We're always happy to engage and kind of talk about where else you can leverage the resources that exist on campus, the amazing core facilities, amazing researchers. So yeah, feel free to reach out and engage with folks.
Can jump in. Animal Biome is hiring. We have a number of UC Davis alumni on our staff. I'm happy to increase the numbers. And also, if you do have a pet with a chronic digestive or skin condition, we'd be happy to help you as well. I guess my one thought in thinking about the IP for Pearl of Wisdom was I recently met someone who said a problem that many academics, including myself, make when we write our first patent application is that we do so much rigorous research in documenting it that we make it seem obvious, and then you have to battle much more with the examiners, and you should really try to make it seem more surprising. And I mean, hopefully it is, but I think that I worked hard to not do that, and it was a learning.
I hope one thing that's come across in today's session is that we are passionate about what we do. We are excited about your science. We want to learn more. We want to help make there be a path for translation. And if we don't know about it, it's tough. So we've encouraged you to come talk to us. We hope that you will. We want to find ways to bring investment to UC Davis that will benefit your research. And help make connections and introductions that might be beyond the campus itself. So Mike mentioned there's a lot of resources we haven't touched on today. Happy to share those separately. But know that we are here to help with that translational pipeline, and we really want to be able to be invested in the work that you're doing.
I don't know. Well, the way I think it is, you look for a problem that is real, that people cares about. You try to solve it. If you are successful and you solve it, then it's very fun to make that to the real world and see that that idea or that research translates into something that is working in the real world. So for me, that is pretty rewarding. So I will encourage you to do it, and they pay you for doing. So it's pretty good.
I think that's a pretty powerful note to end on. Find a big problem and solve it. It's all of you, okay? So thank you so much to our panel for being here today. Thank you to all of you for being here today. Please do come and chat with us, and good luck in all of your endeavors with innovation and commercialization and research. Thank you.